You know how sometimes you just want to get right to the heart of something, cut through the noise, and really grasp the key ideas?
Exactly, and avoid getting totally overwhelmed.
Well, that's precisely what we're doing today. We're going to do a deep dive into a really powerful piece, Steve Jobs' Stanford commencement speech.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic. It really holds up, doesn't it, given it's such a pivotal moment, and it just offers these incredible perspectives on life, work, everything.
It really does. And what's great, I think, is how he uses his own very personal story
Hmm.
to talk about these bigger universal truths.
Absolutely. So for everyone listening, what we're aiming for here is to kind of pull out those essential life lessons, the core principles he shared.
Right. Things you can maybe apply or think about. Doesn't matter what you do.
Yeah.
You want those aha moments, but like without the information overload.
A curated shortcut, maybe.
Exactly. A shortcut to some really profound stuff.
And the way he structured it helps too. It's built around three stories, right? Connecting the dots,
Yeah.
love and loss, and death.
Yeah. Three big ones, each giving a different angle on navigating life.
Definitely. They're very memorable.
Okay. So let's dive into that first one. Connecting the dots,
Hmm.
which actually starts kind of before he was even born with his adoption. It wasn't exactly straightforward.
No, not at all. His biological mother, she was young, unmarried, a college grad student,
Right.
and she really wanted his adoptive parents to be college graduates too. That was like a big deal for her.
So initially, he was meant to be adopted by a lawyer and his wife.
That was the plan. But then, literally at the last minute, they decided they actually wanted a girl.
Wow. Talk about a curveball.
Totally. So his parents, Steve's eventual parents, they were on the waiting list. And they get this call, middle of the night, we've got an unexpected baby boy, do you want him?
And they just said yes right away.
Instantly, of course.
Huh.
But then another snag.
Uh-oh.
His biological mother finds out his adoptive mom never finished college and his dad never even finished high school.
Oh. And she'd insisted on college grads.
Exactly. So she refused to sign the final adoption papers for months.
Seriously? So what changed her mind?
His adoptive parents had to promise, like really promise, that he would definitely go to college someday.
That was the condition. A promise about his future education.
Yep. Only then did she finally relent.
Wild. Okay, so fast forward 17 years,
Hmm.
and he does go to college. Re-college.
Right, which he points out was almost as expensive as Stanford. And his parents, working class folks, were pouring every penny they had into it.
You can feel the weight of that.
Definitely. And then, after just 6 months there, he started questioning it all.
What wasn't working?
He just couldn't see the value. He had no idea what he wanted to do with his life, right? And he couldn't figure out how college is going to help him find that answer.
Plus the costs.
Plus the huge financial burden on his parents. He felt guilty about that.
So he made a massive call. He dropped out.
Yeah. He said it was pretty scary at the time looking back, though. One of the best decisions he ever made.
Why? What changed?
Well, suddenly he didn't have to take the required classes anymore. He was free.
Free to just explore.
Exactly. To drop in on the classes that actually looked interesting, the ones that genuinely sparked his curiosity, even if they had zero practical application, you know?
Okay, but dropping out, that sounds kind of romantic, but the reality must have been tough.
Oh, for sure. He talks about sleeping on the floor in friends' rooms, returning Coke bottles for 5 cents each just to buy food,
Wow, that's rough.
and walking 7 miles across town every Sunday night just to get one good meal a week at the Hare Krishna temple.
Not exactly the typical college experience.
Not at all. But in the midst of all that, he stumbled onto something. That calligraphy class.
Ah, yes. The famous calligraphy class. Reed was known for having great calligraphy instruction, apparently.
Yeah, the best in the country, he said. And because he dropped out and didn't have a normal schedule, he decided to just drop in on this class. Learn about typefaces.
Just out of pure curiosity.
Pure curiosity. He learned about serif and sans serif fonts, about varying the space between letters, about what makes great typography great.
He found it beautiful. Right.
Mhm.
Historical, artistic.
Yeah, in a way that science couldn't quite capture, he said. It just fascinated him.
But practically speaking,
Practically speaking, absolutely useless at the time. No hope of any practical application in his life.
okay, so hold that thought. 10 years later.
10 years later, they're designing the first Macintosh computer, and it all came back to him, all that calligraphy knowledge. Yes. He said they designed it all into the Mac. It was the first computer with beautiful typography, multiple typefaces, proportionally spaced fonts.
It's incredible. So that seemingly random interests.
It became foundational for the Mac's design. And he makes the point, since Windows basically copied the Mac, it's very likely that no personal computer would have the wonderful typography they do today if he hadn't dropped in on that one class.
That's mind-blowing, actually. It really drives home his point, doesn't it?
It perfectly illustrates the connecting the dots idea. You absolutely cannot connect the dots looking forward. It's impossible.
You only see the connections when you look back.
Exactly. You have to trust that somehow the dots will connect in your future.
Trust in what, though?
Your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. You just have to trust something.
Because believing the dots will connect down the road gives you the confidence to follow your heart.
Even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And he says that approach, that trust, has never let him down and made all the difference.
Wow. Okay, powerful first story. Let's move to the second one. Love and loss. This one feels heavier.
It definitely carries a different weight. He starts by saying he was lucky he found what he loved to do early on.
Apple, right. Starting in his parents' garage with Wozniak.
Yeah, when he was just 20. They worked incredibly hard, and in 10 years, Apple exploded. From 2 guys in a garage to a $2 billion company.
With over 4,000 employees. That's insane growth.
It really is. And they just released their masterpiece, the Macintosh, the year before.
And he just turned 30. Seems like the top of the world.
Right. And then he got fired.
Wait, fired? From the company he started. How does that even happen?
Well, as the company grew so big, they brought in someone else to help run it, someone Steve initially thought was really talented.
Okay.
And things went okay for about a year, but then their visions for the future started to diverge pretty dramatically.
And they clashed.
Big time. And when it came down to it, the board of directors sided with the other guy.
So just like that, at 30, he was out.
Out, and very publicly out. He said what had been the focus of his entire adult life was just gone. Devastating.
I can't even imagine. He must have felt like such a failure.
Totally. He said he felt he'd let down the previous generation of entrepreneurs, like he'd dropped the baton.
Did he really say that?
Yeah. He even met with David Packard and Bob Noyce to apologize. He felt like a public failure and even thought about running away from Silicon Valley.
Wow. Just walking away from it all.
But, and here's the love part, slowly, something began to dawn on him.
What was that?
He realized that even though he'd been fired, rejected, he still loved what he did. The work itself, that hadn't changed.
The passion was still there.
It was absolutely still there. So he decided he had to start over.
A fresh start.
And he says, looking back, getting fired from Apple was maybe the best thing that could have possibly happened to him.
Really? How so?
It replaced the heaviness of being successful with the lightness of being a beginner again. Less sure about everything, maybe, but freer.
That's an interesting perspective. Failure is liberation.
Kind of, yeah. And that freedom allowed him to enter one of the most creative periods of his life.
Is this when NXT and Pixar happened?
Exactly. He started NXT, he started Pixar, and he fell in love with his future wife.
And Pixar, obviously.
Yeah.
Huge success. Toy Story.
The world's first computer-animated feature film, yeah. Now the most successful animation studio ever.
So things really turned around.
And then, in what he calls a remarkable turn of events, Apple bought NXT.
Bringing him back to Apple.
Yep. He returned to Apple, and the technology they developed at NXT became the core of Apple's revival, its renaissance.
That's just an incredible story arc. Full circle.
It really is. And the lesson he draws from all this love and loss, it's crucial.
Which is?
You've got to find what you love. Your work is going to fill such a large part of your life.
So the only way to be truly satisfied
is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do.
But what if you haven't found it yet?
His advice is blunt. Keep looking. Don't settle.
Don't just take any job.
Right. He says, just like with matters of the heart, you'll know it when you find it. And like any great relationship, it just gets better and better as the years roll on.
So keep looking. Don't settle. Powerful advice. Okay, third story. Death. This one really shifts the perspective, doesn't it?
It does. It's maybe the most profound. He starts with a quote that hit him when he was 17.
What was the quote?
If you live each day as if it was your last, someday you'll most certainly be right.
Huh. That's intense for a 17-year-old to latch onto.
Right. But he said it made a huge impression. And for the next 33 years, he actually did something with it.
Right.
Every morning, he'd look in the mirror and ask himself, if today were the very last day of my life, Would I want to do what I'm about to do today?
Wow. Every single morning.
Every morning. And if the answer was no, too many days in a row.
He knew he needed to change something.
Exactly. It was his signal.
That's a powerful self-check mechanism.
And he says remembering that he'll be dead soon is the most important tool he's ever found for making the big choices in life.
How does that work? How does remembering death help make choices?
Because, he argues, almost everything, like all the external expectations, all the pride, all the fear of embarrassment or failure, those things just fall away when you face death. They become insignificant. Only what is truly important remains.
It cuts through the noise.
Completely.
Yeah.
He says, remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose.
What trap is that?
The trap of being afraid to take risks, maybe? Afraid to follow your heart because you might lose status or money or face.
But he says...
You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart.
Whoa. That's... yeah, that hits hard.
It's incredibly potent. And then he connects it to his own brush with death.
The cancer diagnosis.
Yeah, about a year before the speech, scan shows a tumor on his pancreas. He didn't even know what a pancreas was.
And the initial diagnosis was bad.
Yeah, awful.
Okay.
Doctors told him it was basically a type they couldn't cure. Gave him 3 to 6 months to live, max.
Oh my God. 3 to 6 months.
Imagine hearing that. The doctor basically told him to go home, get his affairs in order, which he says is doctor code for prepare to die.
So he had to think about telling his kids things he thought he had years to tell them. Saying goodbye.
Yeah, making sure his family was set up. He lived with that death sentence all day.
But then there was a twist.
An unbelievable twist. Later that evening, they did a biopsy. They stuck an endoscope down, got some cells from the tumor, and it turned out to be a very rare form of pancreatic cancer that was actually curable with surgery.
No kidding. That's incredible luck.
Amazing luck. He had the surgery and he was fine.
So he literally faced death, stared it right in the eye.
As close as anyone gets, probably. And that experience gave him a unique certainty about it.
Which was?
Well, first, that nobody wants to die. Even people who want to go to heaven don't want to die to get there.
Oh, fair point.
But, he says, death is the destination we all share. No one escapes it. And this is the interesting part. He thinks it's probably the single best invention of life.
Death. The best invention. How?
It's life's change agent. It clears out the old to make way for the new.
Huh. That's a radical way to look at it. Out with the old, in with the new.
Yeah. He knows it sounds dramatic, but he believes it. Right now, he says to the graduates, you are the new. But someday, not too long from now, you will gradually become the old and be cleared away.
Sobering thought.
Very. Sorry to be so dramatic, he says, but it's true. And the punchline, the call to action from all this is urgent.
What is it?
Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life.
You don't get trapped by dogma.
Which is just living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice.
You have to listen to yourself.
And most importantly, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition.
Because,
he says, they somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary.
wow. Trust that inner knowing. Powerful stuff. Okay, so those are the 3 stories. But he finishes with something else, right? The Whole Earth Catalog.
Yeah, a final little anecdote. He talks about this publication from the late 60s, early 70s called The Whole Earth Catalog, created by a guy named Stuart Brand.
What was it like?
He called it one of the Bibles of his generation, sort of idealistic, overflowing with cool tools and great notions, made before computers, with typewriters, scissors, Polaroids.
Like an analog Google?
Google in paperback form, yeah. That's exactly how he described it, 35 years before Google even existed.
Cool. So what's the significance?
Well, they put out a few issues, and then they did a final issue. It had run its course. And on the back cover of that final issue was a photograph of an early morning country road, the kind you might find yourself hitchhiking on if you were adventurous, he says.
Okay, like a road going somewhere unknown.
Exactly.
Yep.
And underneath the photo were just 4 words.
What were they?
Stay hungry, stay foolish.
Stay hungry, stay foolish.
That was their farewell message. And Jobs says he's always wished that for himself.
To always be learning, always be willing to try things, maybe?
Yeah, I think so. Don't get complacent. Don't think you know everything. Keep that beginner's mind. Be willing to look silly sometimes.
And he wished that for the Stanford graduates starting out.
He did. As they were beginning anew, he wished it for them. And by extension, for all of us, really. Stay hungry. stay foolish.
What a perfect way to end it. Okay, so let's try and wrap this deep dive up. We've covered a lot.
We have those 3 stories.
Yeah.
They really stick with you.
Yeah, first, the whole connecting the dots thing. You can't plan it all. You just got to trust your interests and look back later.
Right. Then the love and loss, finding work you love is critical, and even huge setbacks like getting fired can lead to amazing new beginnings if you keep that passion.
And finally, the perspective of death. Remembering your time is limited helps you cut through the fear and expectations and focus on what truly matters, on following your heart.
Powerful lessons, all drawn from his own life, but so universally applicable.
Absolutely. So maybe a final thought for everyone listening, something to chew on.
Okay.
Thinking about that final message, stay hungry, stay foolish. Maybe ask yourself, what truly makes you feel hungry? Like intellectually curious, driven, wanting more.
And on the flip side, where could you stand to be a bit more foolish? Where could you take a risk, try something unconventional, maybe ignore the doubters a little?
Yeah, embrace that beginner's mind, follow that intuition, even if it seems illogical from the outside. How could applying those ideas change things for you right now?
Good questions to ponder. And definitely, if this sparked something, go listen to or read the whole speech. There's even more depth there.
Totally worth it. Well, thanks for joining us on this exploration today. I hope you found it valuable.